Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, or good whatever, wherever you are. Welcome to another installment of the OWASP Ottawa meetup for April 2021, in case you're watching a recording. This month, we're extremely pleased to have a serial presenter at OWASP Ottawa. Adrien de Beaupre is joining us to talk about JWT security. And if you've been involved in the Ottawa security scene for any period of time, you will have either met Adrien or heard of him. And like me, he got started in security by this book. This should be on any pen tester's bookcase. So in 30 years in the IT industry, and 20 of those specializing in information security, he's an extremely experienced penetration tester, lead, and senior information security professional. And he's also been on the 2010 Winter Olympics security assessment team. So without further ado, welcome, Adrien.
Oh, hey, that's me. All right, let's see if we can do the share thing.
Cross fingers.
Doot.
Which button do I press?
I gotta love technology.
Yeah,
okay.
Awesome.
I think that worked.
Okay. It's COVID. What could go wrong?
So, first thing you might notice is I have hair, which, prior to recently, I did not, which is a new thing. In any case, my name is Adrien de Beaupre, and I'd like to talk to you tonight about information security and, in particular, application security. And I work with a group called SANS and OWASP, but most particularly with SANS, I am a co-author of a course, the Advanced Web Application Penetration Testing, Ethical Hacking, and Exploitation Techniques class. Wow, say that 10 times fast. SEC 642. And this class specifically is about penetration testing modern web applications using modern techniques. So this is a segment, this is a portion of that class given specifically about JWT, and actually, as Garth mentioned, often called JWT. No idea why. Anyway, well, I guess you imagine that there's an A between the J and the W. So JWT security issues. And you might wonder, well, okay, first off, what is JWT? And we'll talk about that. And how is it used? We'll talk about that. What security issues may exist in either the libraries or the implementation choices made therein. And how do we exploit them? So we're going to do hands-on demo. Which, I'll have to apologize in advance. I asked for a virgin goat. Garth could not ship the goat. So no virgin goat means we have no idea how the actual demonstration is going to go. There's Garth. He's going to apologize for the goat thing.
Sorry. Become a goat.
No virgin goat. So JWT, JWT, have been around for a little bit. They're not brand new. But like many things that are often implemented in modern applications, they're not always well understood. And the security implications, the consequences of implementing them, and the choices that you make when you implement them matter. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of repeat what Garth said. My name's Adrien. Here's my email, my website. It's lame. It's okay, I know. My Twitter, because I tweet. My phone number, that actually is my phone number. And I have some certifications. So I've been around for a little while, and most specifically in the Ottawa specific environment. I've worked in information security since late 1999. So now we're in early 2021, so been around for a while. Have some certifications, but more importantly, I've used technology since 1981. It's going on 40 years now. I was not full-time employed in technology in 81, but by 85 I was. So greater than 30 years ago, I worked in banks, I worked in mainframes. Greater than 20 years ago, I specialized in information security, so I've made some major changes in my career path. And in case you're curious, my degree is in political science. What does that mean? It means I talk a lot, believe it or not. I'm good at analysis, good at creative writing, and I've been a contributor, I've been around, and a lot of my career has revolved around or evolved around contributing back. For example, the OSTEM, the Open Source Security Testing Methodology Manual version 3, Hacking Exposed Linux version 3, and the SANS Incident Handling Step-by-Step Guide. I was a minor contributor to those 3 documents. So that's my claim to fame. But I'm also the co-author of 2 SANS courses, Security 642, of which this is a portion, the Advanced Web Application Penetrations class, and 460, the Enterprise Threat and Vulnerability Assessment class in the cloud. So 2 of the major classes from SANS I was a contributor towards. I've been teaching for SANS for well over 10 years now. Courses you'll see me teach: 460, the threat course, vulnerability assessment course; 560, pen testing; 542, pen testing web apps; and 642, my baby, advanced web apps. I've been very fortunate over the years to have been invited to support and contribute towards the SANS Internet Storm Handler function, isc.sans.edu. I've contributed to ZAP, and believe it or not, I think some of my source code might be in there. Rick, you might want to get that out because it's probably bad. OSAMS, Watcher, and other free open source security software out there. And I'm a major proponent of martial arts. In fact, my daughter and I've done martial arts for well over 35 years, and my daughter got involved in martial arts when she was 4. And now she's 17. It's like, wow, how does that happen? In any case, so Goju Ryu is an Okinawan martial art that founded, or one of the 4 founding schools that became karate. In any case, let's get into what are we here for. Adrien, let's talk about this. So JWT, JSON, or JavaScript Object Notation Web Tokens, JWT. You think you know what they are, but they're not. Here's the weird, funny thing. If you read the actual RFCs, yes, I actually do recommend you read the RFCs. They're actually JWS, or JSON, JavaScript Object Notation Web Signature, as part of JOSE, JOSE, which is JavaScript Object Notation Object Signing Encryption. Yes, they put object in there twice. So JOSE is JavaScript Object Notation Object Signing of Encryption and Encryption, of which JWT, JOT, JWS, and JWE, JavaScript Object Notation Web Encryption, are parts of the RFCs. So 7515, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20. Really important reading. And I'll give you links to the URLs later on in the presentation. So RFCs 15 through 20 of 7515 through 20 from 2015. So not super brand new. So what's the point? Well, the point is they're basically for URL safe encoded. What does that mean? Well, characters that cannot be presented correctly in a URL are modified or stripped off after base64 encoding. So, example, you take a text file, you base64 encode it, there may be plus signs, hyphens or minus signs, and dash dash or minus minus for padding. These are not proper characters for HTTP in a URL. So they're actually modified or stripped out. That being said, Why does it matter? Well, it doesn't really matter. You take a JWT, a JWT, really JWS, and you base-for decode it, and you can see it. Excellent. So base-for decode at the command line works just fine. Now, what's the point? The point is there are three parties. A client wishes to authenticate. It will authenticate against the authorization server, receive back a JWT, really JWS. Then, when it accesses the resource server, which may be the same server as the authorization server, it will show the token, right? So I log in, I get a token. I then present my token to one or more resource servers. My apologies, my mic just dropped. I present my token saying, hey, I'm me. I'm asserting claims based on presenting that JWT. So the claims, we do the authentication. Now I validate, I prove, hey, I authenticated, I am logged in. Now I assert claims as in my user ID, perhaps my role, or other things, and that is involved in the authorization process. What am I allowed to do at the resource server? So most common use example, you go to Shodan.io, you have an account, you log in, you find your API key, and then every time you call the REST API for Shodan, you insert your key. Same idea. In this case, some other server, you authenticate to the first server, you receive back your JWT, you then present your JWT saying, hey, I'm Adrien, I'm logged in, I'm allowed to access A, B, C, but not E. So important parts here are the authentication process, logging in, the assertion, I am Adrien, and the authorization, Adrien can access this resource on that server. Often used again in API calls, can be SOAP, can be REST, can be GraphQL, which is a teaser. GraphQL is another major topic and major section in Security 642, the Advanced Web Appendix class at SANS. So what does a JWT look like? Well, it's really easy to see. There are three parts. There's a header, a dot, a payload, a dot, a signature. In fact, they're fairly telltale signs because certain characters tend to be near the beginning of both the header and the payload. So you can literally come to recognize the characters you commonly see there, along with the dots. So characters, dot, characters, dot, characters. And the characters are all base-for encoded, therefore they follow patterns. They are not encrypted in this case. I mentioned JWT can encrypt. Most implementations do not encrypt. All the contents are in clear text. Now, the most important feature of this is, of course, the signature. The signature says, I am the signature of the first two parts, right? The header and the payload, based on this algorithm, here's my signature. If anything is changed in either the header or the payload, the signature will not match. There are a number of algorithms used for signing. One is HS256, stands for HMAC, or Keyed Message Authentication Code, HMAC, with SHA, usually 256. So HS256 is HMAC 256. And there's a secret known only to the server. So the server creates an HMAC with something special only the server knows, we don't, and then signs the JWT, sends it to you. If you modify it and send it back, it will not validate. So there's more than one algorithm. Some of them are a hashing algorithm like HMAC. Others are PKI based like RSA. We'll talk about that later. So number of algorithms. Now, here's the thing. There are some interesting security issues in the libraries and the choices you make when you actually deploy or implement JWT in your environment. Now, as an aside, if you have any questions, please do feel free. At the end, we'll have a question section, so like keep notes or whatever, because I'm hoping you have questions. I'm positive you'll have questions, and we should have things to talk about, because I won't talk for a whole hour. So the JWT parts, right? First is the header. So notice, and actually, whoop, there we go. So this part. So there's curly brace, there's curly brace, colon, so double quote type, double quote colon, so that's the first part, JWT, comma, ALG, colon, RS256. So this is saying that I am a JWT and I'm using the algorithm 256. This is a JSON or JavaScript object notation format. That's the header. In the header, basically, this is all you see typically. Type and algorithm. Now, the payload, remember that's a separate part. There are 7 possible register claims. You can make your own, like foo equal bar or role equals administrator. Other and above and beyond the register claims, you can add claims. The commonly used claims are issued at, issuer, and expiration, among others. Again, you can add your own custom claims like role equals Adrien. Then, of course, there's a signature. Very important, right? Without the signature, there's no method to determine if there's been a modification of the first 2 parts, which are the header and the payload. So, commonly used algorithms are HS or HMAC SHA-256, RS or RSA for Rivet Schmier Adelman 256, and ES or ECDSA 256. And this guy, where's my, this. You can use an algorithm of none. And that's why I put that careful sign there. Algorithm of none. Like, what does that mean? Well, if there's no algorithm in the signature, there is no signature. Therefore, there is no tamper detection. You cannot tell if something changed. And there is no integrity check. So imagine if I send you something with no signature, could you not just change it and send it back? The answer is yes, you can. Now, other important aspect here is the base64, right? Base64 is an encoding algorithm. It is not a hash. It is not encryption. It is encoding, which means as a two-way function, hopefully you can't hear the birds. I have birds in my backyard. Hopefully you can't hear the birds, but also if you can see the encoding mechanism based before URL encoding, you can decode, meaning it's in the clear, even though there's a signature. So down near the bottom there, you see this to there, that's the header. This to the next dot, that's the payload, and the rest is signature. If there's nothing after the second dot, it must be none. Now, also the length of the signature matters. If it's relatively short, it's probably HMAC. If it's relatively long, it's probably RSA or ECDSA. Now, I've been a big fan of Python for many years. Perl, PRL. Perl and I had a nasty breakup probably about 20 years ago now. Used to write a lot of Perl code. We no longer get along. I purely write Python code. So, for example, we can use a library, import JWT. Right? This gives us the ability to create and validate JWTs. So I create a variable, my key equals, in byte format, secret. And the parameter is, I want it encoded UTF-8. My payload, this is my claim, IN user ID number 1. Then, a new variable, signed JWT is, this function, JWT.encode, my payload, right, which is this, my key, which is this, and I'm specifying the algorithm is HS256. This is the server, authenticates the user, creates a JWT, sends it back. Then, the server receives back from the user something. It does a decode using signed JWT, my key. Okay, 1 second. To encode, I needed 3. I need 1, 2, 3 parameters. The third is algorithm. Notice if the server does the decode without the algorithm, that means the attacker can specify the algorithm because the code on the server did not specify. Interesting. So imagine you're the coder. Would you put in the algorithm? Maybe, maybe not. Depends upon the example you saw, depends upon how you're taught, depends upon the documentation of this library, right? So many JWT security issues, JWT. One, base84 is a reversible function. It's effectively in the clear. It's clear text, which means anything that's in there, if it's not properly description, we can see. So there's information security, information disclosure. Good thing I'm talking. Sorry, Garth?
I think your mic is breaking up.
My mic is breaking up.
Not with you, but it's having some issues.
Okay. Is it rubbing against me?
I don't know. You started to, we got a lot of static. So either you were, channeling Black Sabbath or something, but there was some distortion. It sounds okay now.
Okay. Could be doing my Motorhead impression. Okay. Sorry about that. So security issues. base84 is clear text. There may be information disclosure, or there may be information disclosure not just to us, to the attacker, but to the third party via something like cross-site scripting, cross-site forgery. One is, as well, security issue, if the server receives back the JWT and does not validate the signature, or there's one specific vulnerability whereby if you excluded the signature, even though there was a header specifying HS256 or RS256, the two most common, but there was no signature, would not validate. Another example is taking a JWT from one server, using it somewhere else. And if it shares the same secret mechanism to do validation, either HS256 secret key or RS256 private key, it'll work. You can also crack the HMAC key, the HS256 key. So if I can crack the key using either brute force or a dictionary, Once I succeed at cracking the key, I can now change the claim to be some other user and submit it. There is one other vulnerability here called algorithm substitution, whereby if the server has a private and public key pair that uses RSA 256, and we have a copy of the public key, we take the JWT they give us, we change the header from RS256 to HS256, we change the payload to some other user, let's say user 2, whereby we were previously user 1, then add a HS256 signature whereby the server's public key is used as the HS256 secret. And as on a previous example, if the server does not specify the algorithm when it does the decode, it will use the algorithm specified in the attacker-controlled header. Now, of course, as well, if the attacker can steal the HS256 key or the RS256 private key via some other attack, via command injection or whatnot, or local file include, game over. And there are a number of other issues with, for example, X509 or set URL or other key issues inside of the specification. So the most common three you're going to see are information disclosure, none, cracking the HS256 key, or algorithm substitution. Those are the three most common attacks we're going to see, and we are going to demo. I love demos. So first off, I get a JWT. Can I identify which algorithm was used? The answer is yes. All I need to do is base64 decode using URL safe the header, right? So I take the header, which is the first part before the dot, out of the JWT they give me. I run it through base64, URL safe base64 decode, and put it in a variable called myalgo. Print myalgo, and it'll say, psst, by the way, I'm HS256, or whatnot, or none, right? So remember, base64 decode is effectively in the clear, so we can see which algorithm they used, which leads us to which attack we might try against that algorithm. Can use burp decoder, of course, or command prompt with base64-D. When you do either burp decoder or the command line base64-D, you have to remember that some of the characters are different, and the padding that you often see in base64, the equal at the end, has to be chopped off. We'll see that again when we do re-encoding, and have to remember to take into account how JWT does base64. So the none algorithm is bad. So they give us, where's my mouse? There we go. So they give us this. You look at it, okay, there's the header, stop. There's the payload, stop, and a dot at the end. Where's the signature? There's no signature, so it must be none. It has to be none because there is no signature. So all I have to do is decode the header, leave it as none, decode the payload, change it to whatever I want, re-encode it, send it back. So whatever claim was in that JWT in the JWT can be now modified to anything. Now, in some cases, the server may have specified HS256 or RS256 or others, but not validate signatures on the way back. So all I do is change it to none, modify, send it back in, boom, we're making claims that we should not be able to make. Now, cracking HIS 256 secrets. There are 3 easy-to-use tools out there, one of which you may already be familiar with. That's my friend John. So John the Ripper. You put the JWT into a file and specify the format, and you're good to go, right? It'll use this dictionary, and if it's in the dictionary, boom, it works. Excellent. There's a specific JWT, JWT crack. It's a C program. You specify the JWT value on the command line. You specify the alphabet, literally A, B, C, D, E, F, G through X, Y, Z, and number of characters to try. This one does brute force, so hypothetically, it could take a very, very long time, right? Dictionary, of course, being fastest, just checking the dictionary. Next being hybrid, doing dictionary plus modification, also called munging or mangling. Last, of course, is total brute force. Could take a long time if it's greater than 8 characters, for example. And of course, Hashcat. Hashcat uses M16500 for JWT files. You specify the file name, the password list, and -- force. And any one of these 3 programs, or all 3, if you have the computational power or the GPUs, will eventually crack the password of HIS 256, right? Remember, this is specifically for HIS 256 that uses a secret. Using a keyed hash message authentication code, HMAC, with SHA-256. So algorithm substitution is a weird feature. It's very similar to the first thing I showed you, whereby when the server receives back the JWT, right? If it does not specify which algorithm to use when it decodes, you can kind of cheat it. So for example, they give you an RS-256 PKI signed with the public key, which should be validated with the RS-256 private key, right? So if they sign with their private key, we validate with the public key. There's no encryption here. Now, if we take their payload, modify it, re-encode it, take the header, change it from RS-256 to HIS-256, we need the public key, because one of the features here is we need the public key and we use it as the RS-256 secret key. So we use the public key as a secret key with the algorithm HIS-256, send it back in, and if the server did not specify which algorithms are allowed on the way in for validation, it will pass. This is called algorithm substitution, or key substitution, or I've also seen algorithm confusion. Right? Sometimes the names of these vulnerabilities become a little bit interesting. And of course, the key aspect is there, we can change the claim, right? The claim being assertion of who we are and what we're allowed to do in the application. So there's a tool out there called Joseph. Joseph in the Beaupre store is called the JSON Web Token Attacker. So JSON Web Token Attacker in the Beaupre store, inside Beaupre, is called Joseph. One of the attacks it can do is you proxy your browser or whichever tool you're using through Beaupre, right? Beaupre Suite Pro or Beaupre Suite Community. With this extension loaded, it recognizes a JSON Web Token and says, hey, I'm going to give that a special color. You can then right-click in the HTTP proxy history, send it to Joseph, then you can do attacks. One of the attacks is called the signature exclusion attack. All it does is strip off the signature, put none as the algorithm in 4 different ways. And over here, oops, not over there, over here. Notice it does none all caps, none one cap, none new caps, and none with a capital O. Those are the 4 checks it does. If you wanted to do more checks than that, you'd have to write an intruder special payload, and we'll show you how, in order to do more characters than just the 4 different checks it does there, right? It does 4 checks. 0 is always the baseline, meaning the unmodified submission. So it'll take the original query and run it again. Then the other 4 checks will run the same query with the algorithm substitution attack, or signature exclusion attack, sorry. Now, do the same thing with intruder if I wanted a greater list. So here I mentioned you take the request that is highlighted. That's because Beaupre recognizes, hey, that's a JWT. We send it to intruder. Down here is right where it would say send to Joseph. When you're in intruder, you clear all positions and you set it to be the header. You then delete the signature, right? Add, right? So here we have the header with the add, the squiggly S, which is section header. We have the payload, and we've stripped off the signature manually. We then go in and manually add the payload we want, none, 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 none. So we're just recreating what we did with Joseph in the previous step. Now, a couple things here. We have to add the header. Whoops, nope, not down there. We have to add the prefix and a suffix between these two. So type JWT alg : double quote. Between those two will be those words, none, 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 but they need to be base64 encoded. You also need to take out the equal signs and replace with double quotes, right? So a couple things we need to do to the payload is add specific payload processing rules to each of the individual Burp Suite intruder runs, whereas Burp Suite here in this case is our fuzzer. Now, signature exclusion, same idea. Right click, send to Joseph, signature intrusion, signature exclusion, click on load. Whoops, right here, click on load and attack, and it brings up another window that looks very much like intruder and does those 4 attacks. So here we can see that none with a capital N worked, right? It got a 200 OK. Whereas in fact, this one got a 500 response code, 360. That was actually invalid. Now, key confusion. Remember, this one is where they send us an RS-256 signature in the header. Right click, send to Joseph. In Joseph, click on the key confusion attack, load, paste the public key, and hit attack. And it does a large number of HS-256 substitutions using the public key. So it'll again open up a second window like intruder, showing us the output. So here, for example, it does output of HS 380 something, HS 256, and every combination of HS that is possible, and they all actually get back a valid username. Meaning that the injection with the exchange of the RS256 in the header to HS256 in the header, taking the payload in that new header, signing it HS256 with the public key as the secret, bypasses that same section of code on the server where the server did not specify when it does the decode which algorithms are allowed. Now, this particular attack in Joseph tries a large number of different attacks. So conclusion, I'm going to hit demo in like no time now because what would be 1947? I guess I'm talking slow. Sorry. Security issues with JWT. They are a claim. You log in, the server gives you claims saying, hey, you're Adrien and you are role admin and you are user ID 5 or 42 or not. Very often seen in SOAP or more recently in REST and GraphQL. 3 parts, header, claim, or payload signature. 3 parties, user logs in from client to authorization server, receives back a JWT, presents a JWT to the resource server or servers plural. Issues, right? What if we do SQL injection in our claim or file inclusion or NoSQL injection, right? Because our claims are processed server side when we send them back in, right? They check the signature, everything matches. They go, oh, okay, that's just fine. So we don't have to do validation against that, right? So if we inject injection attacks inside the claims, they may work. Information disclosure, of course, the none algorithm is a problem. Cracking the HS256 key, signature exclusion, just dropping it off. Algorithm substitution between RS256 and HS256, assuming we have the public key. Hey, what about we steal the server's private key? That works. Crack the server's private key. There have been many vulnerabilities in JWT libraries. And even if you're using a modern library, if you make poor choices when you install it in integration in your implementation, and of course, reuse JWT against other resource servers are also bad. Lots of resources. So URLs, I sent the PDF to Garth as well. Also, just reach out to me. I'll send you the PDF of all these resources like the RFCs, JWT.io, example code, all the attacks, and the code I'm going to do a demo with really, really shortly. But I also want to bring special attention to my friend Robin. Robin Wood is DigiNinja. He wrote a lab, an exercise called AuthLab at authLab.digi.ninja. It's also in his GitHub. As well, Juice Shop also has a number of JWT related exercises in it. All right. So I mentioned that already. So let's, hey, Adrien, do some demo, right? Okay, so this is a lab VM I use in the class for 642, JWT-lab, and it fires up the exercise. I also need Burp, Pro version, running on port 8080. That'll be significant fairly shortly when I show you how I'm going to use curl and HTTPy proxied through Burp to access the servers. So let's look at the first server. The first server, I'm going to log in. Add a command prompt. So HTTP is the command line. Proxy through Beaupre, listening on port 8080. Do a post against port 8000/login, where my email is user1 and my password is password. This is the expected format for this application. And it gives me back a token. So this is just Python 3.6, just a standard library. So it gives me back a token, but let's look at it. I see EYJ0 out through a dot, then EYJ1. You're going to recognize that pattern again and again and again in almost every JWT implementation. Out to a dot. So this one is using the none algorithm. So could I not change the payload, send it back, signed with none, and see what happens? Well, let's first just check to see if this actual JWT works. So I'm going to copy it and log in. So logging in is fairly straightforward. So HTTP-proxy 8080. So there's Beaupre using again. Through localhost 8000. The endpoint is get user authorization. Oh, and I didn't keep a copy of all right, need that online. What time is it? Oh yeah, it's getting late.
It's a demo.
It's a demo. It's supposed to work though. All right, so take the JWT, right click, copy, right click, paste. All I'm doing is logging in, right? It says, hey, your user ID won. Yay. All right, so let's take that first part. What algorithm are they using? Let's see how we can tell. So I took some Python code. Identify the algorithm. Basically, this decodes the header. So take the header. It's it. Whoops. You mean the correct padding. That should be fine. Must have messed up when I copied it. So it should be from here to here. Copy. Incorrect padding. There's some padding in there. Wow. Okay. Here. Through here. Copy. What are you doing wrong there? Interesting. Why is it doing that? I copied it correctly. All right, let's try double quotes. Sometimes weird things happen. Nope. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on there. Copy.
Maybe it was that goat I didn't sacrifice to the demo gods.
I'm going to blame you, Garth. I'm telling you, my friend.
It's COVID. What could go wrong?
You know, I did the entire exercise like 10 minutes ago. Or wow. Something's wrong here.
Well,
It's the header, right? All I'm doing is basically for decoding the header.
my nerd attempt would be to ask, you know, and it's an OCD thing, is ask, are we pulling in the right library? All things being equal.
Echo. Okay. There.
Ding.
Why did that not work when I did it?
To the rest.
Why did that not work when I did it in Python? There. It's a none algorithm. There we go. So getting back to, we're going to swap that one. Okay. So here we have a token with none. Swap none. Then change the user ID to 2 by taking out the jot that's in there. Note that I'm encoding with not. There. Now the B indicates it's in byte mode. So we're going to ignore the B. Copy that and go back to authentication. Authentication was here. So now I've changed my user ID from 1 to 2. There. So now the user accepts my user ID 2. My email changed, and I'm now admin. Wow, I've totally run out of time. Wow. I have like 2 more demos to do.
Well, I've got all the time. You can keep going.
Okay.
I'll just ask one question that was posted. Is the padding because we needed to add == to the end of it?
Yes. So the == is ignored or stripped out because it's not usable inside a URL, right?
Okay.
Before the parameters start, right? So you have parameter where it's question mark, user equals Adrien, and password equals foo. Those are parameters. They're actually not part of the URL. Technically, they're part of the URI, to be specific.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the actual URL cannot contain those characters. It also cannot contain plus, right? Because plus is actually the space character. It cannot contain the underscore character because it means something else. So you have to change it to a dash. So that's actually a function of the base64 URL safe library that JWT uses.
Okay.
All right. If you have time, I'll just do one more.
Keep going. We're hearing Cyber Cowboy says, go, go, go.
Okay. So second server is on a different port. So still HTTP, proxy through Beaupre, post to 8001, log in, same username, password. We're going to get back a jot. And if you look at this jot, it's got a header, a payload, and a signature. So if I take the header, I'm going to use base64 on the command line again because that's going to fail on me again, right? So echo -n, quote, right click, paste, quote, pipe, base64-d. So it is HS256. So they've given us HS256, right? The common attack here is let's crack the key. So to crack the key, let's see, we can use hashcat or John. Let's use hashcat. So the syntax is I'm going to put that in a file. So there's our syntax. We need the content of the JWT to be in that file. So home, my home, course files, my JWT. So we need to take the JWT, copy it, my JWT, insert, paste. So there's my JWT, which we know is signed H256. We're going to take our hashcat. We actually have to be in the hashcat directory to run it correctly. Click paste. And pretty darn quick, it says, hey, it's literally the word secret. Now, believe it or not, I read through some documentation of one of the libraries, and it said, use secret, except in prod, right? In production, you should change to something else. But the code example used secret. So why would we not use secret, right? Because that's okay. So now we know the code is secret. And we can do, need to be back in my course file directory. And we need, not none, identify, nope. Forge DSA, there we go. So Forge DSA, now that you know the secret is secret, right? Just make my key is secret, my payload is JWT2, and you know what? I'm actually going to leave out the issue dat and the issuer and the expiry date. Why would I put that in there? I don't need all that stuff. I don't want expiry dates. I'm just going to put in my new payload with my assertion that I'm JWT2, right? With the key that I now know is secret, and say algorithm HS256, and let's make a new JWT. And there we go, between the quotes, leave out the B, because it just tells us that it's in byte format. Now we need to authenticate against 8001. Not 8000. With the JWT that is, in fact, DSA signed, or sorry, no, HS256. Paste, HS256 signed. Boom. Number 2, admin is min. All right, so I'm totally going over time. I'm going to do all 3 demos. And we're going to authenticate one last time against the server on 002. Same username password. So what I did is I downloaded a library in Python that was used to demonstrate how JWTs worked. And then I made 3 copies. And one of them, I made it with none. The second one I made with HS256. And the third one I made with RS256. Then I deliberately went back to a previous version of the library that was vulnerable to all 3 attacks, right? So it's kind of custom code because I modified it to make it very vulnerable, but okay, so here we have our token. Notice how much longer it is than the previous ones. That's indicative of PKI signature and not HMAC. Whereas HMACs are always a fixed length, right? PKI signatures can be much, much longer. So we're going to authenticate anyway, just for fun, to log back in with our authorization token. I'll authenticate it, I'm going to authorize, right? Paste. So I'm user ID 1, there we go. But we surf around the website and we find there public key. And we identify through the header don't even actually need the -n, do we? -d. So it says, hey, I'm RS-256. So I know RS-256, one of the issues could be if I have the public key, I could re-sign it HS256 with the public key as a secret and send it back. See how that works. So that code is in the file swap alg. So VI swap alg. We have a copy of the server's public key. We want to be user ID 2. Notice again, I'm leaving out the IAT and the ISS and the EXP. And we're going to encode it with my key, the public key here being the secret, algorithm 256, and see what happens. So /swap alg. We now have a token. Notice how much shorter it is. So it's definitely HS256. We can double check that by validating the header. So now we need to authenticate back again, one last time. Back to the dot. I guess this attack can be a little bit more attractive if you have like a real application like Juice Shop. But I like doing it this way because it's very obvious command line. Oop, token is valid. Ooh. I must have copied too much. Okay, so Control-C, Control-L. Authenticating is here. Oh, you know, I copied the whole, I think I copied the whole JWT, not just the signature. So I need to erase the entire JWT all the way back to the header. Paste. User 2, woohoo! So, sorry about that. I went 9 minutes over. So that's my demo. And again, I deliberately jigged these applications to make them vulnerable on purpose by modifying the Python library behind the implementation. One of the references I gave you is the actual code of the original app before I changed it. If you want the code, ask me, I'll send it to you. If you want the slides, ask me to send them to you. Questions?
We have questions.
Excellent.
We've got a few questions, and I'm just going to scroll through them to find from the beginning. So one question is, why the none algorithm? Why would they actually put that in? You know, you know, full disclosure, I remember when I originally read that RFC and I had a WTF moment. And the reason I was reading the RFC was because I was doing a pen test that was using a JOT. And the very thing I went for was none. And of course I logged in as Donald Trump. So I just, why is it there?
I have no idea. It's in the RFC. It's actually kind of vague. One RFC says HS256 is required and none is not. And another RFC says that none is required as well as HS256. So it's very vague. RFCs are not precise. And how they're interpreted by vendors when they implement the code, it can be really interesting. I would say it makes no sense. So it makes no sense at all, except perhaps in debugging mode, debugging some other problem in code. It's like IPsec, right? IPsec can have an algorithm of null, right? Why? Because you can.
Sorry.
Because I guess I'm being facetious. I don't know why. Let me actually answer the question. The answer is no. It never makes sense to use it, except perhaps debugging code.
Right. And that I can sort of see somebody wanting to bypass this.
But then it should be removed from production.
But that's part of the problem. You see, the other thing I notice is that people will, in their code, bring in a library. They think it does that for them, and then they walk away from it. And the default is none in this case. And that was
or getting to the next example, he just 256. So what's the default secret in your code? Is it secret?
No, it'd be
and in one example, it actually is. And you should probably change that.
Well, it's cut and paste code. All right. Enough about that. There's a question about SEC 642. Now, I know that, having looked at the SANS site, that there's online and there's lot. There was in person in the before time, BC, before COVID, and then there's an online component live, and then there's I guess a downloadable.
Fair question. The version of 642 in this year I wrote last year.
Right.
At the end of 2010, I wrote the end of 2020, I wrote the 2021 update. It has API in day 3, does not contain the JWT content yet. That content I expect to update in about a month from now.
So I'm wondering if people...
So literally, the slides you just saw and the demo you just saw will literally replace one of the exercises in day 3 of the current content.
Right. And I don't know enough about the subscription mechanism, but I'm guessing Scott's next question is
will he see this update? The answer is no.
Right.
Maybe he saw it, but
well,
actually, oddly enough,
I don't know how long the subscription is. Just a direct download.
The subscription is 4 months. If I
recall correctly. So if it's going to be updated in a month, then he can just re-access it and he'll have access to it.
No, that's not how SANS. No, SANS gives him that version. That's it.
Oh, right. So it's here's the video and that's it.
Yep.
Straight transaction. Right. Okay. Well, at least he saw it here. So one of the questions I actually had was, out of all these attacks that you've shown us, which one have you found, what has been found to be the most successful? I'm guessing it's none, but I'm sitting here with my way proved wrong.
They all should be fixed in any modern library that has been implemented correctly. None of them should work. All these attacks are more than 6 months, possibly as many as 4 years old. So none of these attacks should work anymore. That being said, which version of the library you use and how you choose to implement it, this is pen testing, right? You never know.
Right. Hey, there's blah 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 blah. Let me find this out. Well, you see a scroll of this, but so here's one, so this is just in time information. So somebody's got a gig, they know they're using JOTs. So
Rob, you have to pay me to get my advice on the next gig. You can't just get free information like that. It's okay. Rob's a good friend.
All right.
I'm pulling his leg. Yeah.
So Rob knows where to send beer and pizza.
Joseph is the Beaupre plugin, or they call it JSON Web Token Attacker.
All right. Well, I don't see any other questions other than nice hair and um, 3 and 5-year-old jQuery. Yeah, those are always fun.
So I saw something recently on a list whereby a third-party product required a vulnerable version of jQuery be installed.
Why?
Because.
So they were independent.
Otherwise, the app didn't work. Otherwise, the app didn't work.
Right. So they were in some kind of dependency hell.
Mm-hmm.
Or they were using a CMS that had a requirement and they had standardized and there was some rule and thou shalt and.
Yep.
Right. Other than
as an aside, I believe, if I recall correctly, Rob and I sat the first version of this course in Atlanta, Georgia, 8 years ago.
Halcyon days.
Or thereabouts. Then I took over as author of the course.
Well, it's good to know that it's continually evolving.
It does.
So, well, maybe instead of us having a conversation here between you and Rob through comments in YouTube, we should check to see if there are any other questions.
Any other questions? Yep. About hair, about life theories versus anything. The birds. I'm not sure you can hear that.
Yeah, I hear them occasionally. It's I hear the pterodactyls in the background. I think that's it.
All right, awesome. Thank you all. Hopefully you enjoyed this chat. And again, this is brand new content going into 642 for the next month or so. It is not in the current version, but reach out. I will send you slides. I will send you demos. I will get you up to speed.
All right. Are you on our OWASP Ottawa Slack?
Oh, God. How many Slacks am I on? Just for SANS, I think I'm on 4 different Slacks. I don't think I am, and I should check because I don't think I am.
All right. So just for anybody wishing access to see the slides or any other content or questions to anybody on the call who has those questions, just reach out to me on the Slack and I will forward them on to save Adrien from yet another Slack Discord chaos. All right. Thanks again. We'll look forward to another one. Hopefully, maybe in the not too distant future when we're.
I promised you what, SAML or OAuth?
I would go personally. My choice would be OAuth, but I can put it to a vote.
No, I'm currently researching it, so I'll be writing an OAuth section expected within the next few months.
All right, so maybe we can sort of say fallish time frame.
You don't like SAML? SAML's awesome.
SAML is so, I think I've said this already. SAML is so what, 2000s?
So SANS uses SAML.
Why? So that's my next question would be why?
They don't ask me.
Really? Yeah, quite an interesting collection of exploits associated with SAML.
XSW.
Now that one I don't know of, but I might.
XML signature wrapping.
Okay. Sort of my 3-letter acronym cache.
XSW, you're overflowing you, and that's no problem.
Well, maybe we'll put it to a vote. And if we have a collection of SAML fans, or at least a collection of people who are interested in SAML because they've got targets that use that follow SAN's example of using mechanisms, then maybe that will be the one. So I'll put it to a vote, and and see what democracy holds for us.
All right, is it me?
There's already some.
It's 2021. It's dinner time for me. Oh, what? Yeah. Okay. Next.
Maybe we'll see. That's one vote. Vote early, vote often. Thanks again. Thanks everyone for joining. Of course, this is going to be on the YouTube, and we'll. You said that word. You said a bad word. So we'll look forward to our postings for May and June. If you want to speak, get in touch, and we'll catch you all later. Stay safe, everyone.
Great. Ciao.